How did you lose your V-card? Story 1. When I was 13, my dad was a truck driver who was gone most of the week but back on weekends. In the quest for more money, he decided to become an LHT owner or operator, which would keep him on the road for months at a time. My dad decided she didn't want to be away from my stepmom for that long, so she got her CDL and went with him. My stepmom's friend Remy moved in to watch me and my 3 brothers and brought her 2 daughters with her, one 17 and one 19. One of them came up to her room one day and asked me if I knew how to eat a lady's private parts. I told her no, but she asked me if I wanted to learn. I was a teen, so of course I thought I hit the jackpot. I went down on her, and then things got a little bit more heated after that. The fun part besides all this was since I had no clue about condoms and whatnot. She missed her period the next month, and I got my first pregnancy scare. She didn't end up being pregnant, but it was definitely a heavy burden weighing on my mind for quite a bit. That was a roller coaster. As if I'm reading about how you lost it, I first see you mention my dad and I'm thinking, oh no. Then I keep reading and see it's not him. Then I see you mention my stepmom's friend and I think, oh no, but it's not her. Then I read the 19-year-old and think, oh okay. Then I remember your age and think, oh no. Story 2. Well, I lost mine in a race car bed. He was 17 and his room was decked out with Hot Wheels. Nothing wrong with a race car bed. I had a friend with that kind of bed when he was 9. Story 3. I lost it with my current boyfriend 2 years ago. We were dating for 6 months beforehand and went on a hike from a birthday to my favorite hot springs inside of a slot canyon. It was dark by the time we got to the end where the hot springs were, and no one else was there. We did it half in and half out of the hot spring. It was a genuinely awesome experience. As we were hiking out, it started pouring, and we had to legitimately book it back from this 3-mile high through a slot canyon to get out. This normally takes about 3 hours to navigate, with rock climbing and dangerous terrains even when dry. We made it out about an hour and a half running as we were worried about flooding, which can happen quickly. Thankfully, we made it out unscathed. We'll definitely check the weather next time. It was one of the coolest adrenaline rush experiences I've ever had, and I'm very lucky to have had such a great time. Story 4. I was on vacation with my family to Walt Disney World. My brother got to bring his best friend, so naturally my parents let me bring my then-girlfriend with us. We slept in separate resort rooms, mom and girlfriend in one, and dad and the boys' eye the other with a conjoining door. We had a free pass to go to whichever park we wanted in the condition that we met for lunch and dinner, and that we were not to be in the resort room alone. Fair deal. We were just there to have a great vacation. Well, middle of the trip and we were hanging out in the rooms taking a break from the parks, and my mom takes my brother and his friend to the pool, leaving my girlfriend and I to rest in one room and my dad to sleep in the other. With the conjoining door open or cracked, of course. This was also during the FIFA World Cup, so the TVs were showing coverage non-stop, and the sound of the vuvuzelas was deafening, so a cracked door with a TV blasting was perfect enough cover for 2 teenagers to fool around. We did everything, but for what seemed like hours before, she and I finally decided it was time to play just the tip. Well, while in the heat of the moment, our intentions became foggy and the phrase, "move your hand" in my head was a full-on invitation for the real deal, and that it. The trip changed from that point on. We were closer than ever. My parents didn't notice, I think, but once we got back from that vacation and were back in school, our friends knew something had happened. Story 5. Probably pretty standard stuff here. 17 with my 16-year-old girlfriend in my room. We had been together for about a year and a half and had done virtually everything but the deed together at that point. We were cuddling and making out and doing the usual rubbing bit, and as we rubbed with her on top, it kinda just went inside her unplanned. We went for about 2 minutes, then decided to stop because we didn't really do the whole protection thing or check with each other if it was okay that we had been normally doing up until that point with what was going on because she had a few past traumas. Also, we didn't have some protection on because it was implant. First time for both of us. In hindsight, I'm lucky that I didn't come unexpectedly at that age and was able to pull back and stop. About a month later, we did the same but more planned out. Decided what we both would wear that day, went for a fancy dinner and a walk, wrote each other letters, all that cheesy teenager stuff. Lasted a grand total of 2 minutes maybe? No big deal, just kept doing other stuff until the next round. It's only awkward if you make it that way. Story 6. To a girl I'd known since middle school, she was at a sleepover with some friends in her freshman year of high school. Got a phone call at like 2 a.m. from her, and her friends asking if I can get them beer. I had a case from a party in the fridge, in my room. I was living with my aunt and uncle, and they really didn't care if I drank. So I drove over to her friend's house, and it's like 6 girls having a mini party, basically. Her parents were gone, they had me park a block away because no guys rule. And snuck in, well, they all thanked me, and of course the topic of comes up. Well, Katie and I both admit that we're virgins, so the committee decides we should do it. They were both down, let's so yeah, my first time I had an audience. Still friends with Katie to this day, I hang out with her and her wife quite often. Another thing I forgot to mention Katie is bi, so, no, I did not drive her to the other team, law. Her wife does know of our history and is cool with it. She's happy we each lost it to someone respectable. Story 7. I'm no loser, I took my virginity with my own hands. Some might say this is the right way to do it. Story 8. Once upon a time it was a closeted lesbian. My friends and I used to go into a rural Walmart in the middle of the night to steal beer when we were 17. We usually just pocketed like 1 to 2 each and walked out. One night around 2 a.m. we headed to Walmart to do the usual. We were passing through the toy section to head towards the beer in the back, and we rounded a corner and saw Ben. Ben was in his early 20s. He had a 2-foot-tall mohawk that I later learned was held up by Elmer's glue. He was riding a pink tricycle down the aisle as an employee followed him, trying to get him to stop and put the bike back. We all laughed at him and my buddy struck up a conversation. He came to Ben's attention that we were there to steal beer. He told us he would help. Sweet. He grabbed a card and proceeded to put an entire 30-pack onto the bottom of the cart. We thought he was being cool and was going to buy all of that for us, but no, he just wheeled that card right out into the parking lot to my friend's car. Now at the time I knew I was sexually interested in women, but I was still trying really hard to make friends and family believe I was straight. I decided that if I had to have a man, this was the guy for me. I started flirting and got his number. Next weekend a friend down in Jacksonville was having a party. My best friend said we should go, and that she was bringing her boyfriend Philip, and that they were going to do it for the first time the night of the party. My entire puberty thus far had been following my best friend's cues. I got my first boyfriend when she did, I kissed a boy the same time she did, etc. So I figured, well, okay, I guess it's time to lose my V card now too. I invited Ben and we went down to Florida. Turns out the only private place to do the deed was 1 bedroom. My best friend and I lost our virginity together in the same bed. Long story short, Ben is actually a really nice and intuitive guy. He asked me later why I seemed uncomfortable. I admitted I was gay. It was one of the first people I was honest about it with. I am now married to a woman, and Ben and I still keep in touch almost 20 years later. Story 9. I haven't lost my virginity because I don't lose. Hell yeah, man, that's the mindset right there. So if you don't want to be a loser, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's go back to the video. Story 10. Age 17. A guy I thought was super cute threw a small party, while his parents were out of the country. There were like 6 of us total. After a couple hours hanging in the backyard, I asked for a full tour of the house, which coincidentally ended in his bedroom. And noticed he had a guitar in his room and asked him to play me a song. He played and sang Little Lion Man by Mumford & Sons, which was super popular at the time. I realized it was completely tone deaf, but felt flattered nevertheless. We kissed, and it followed naturally. We dated for a couple of years, then broke up when I moved out of state. 6 years later, we reconnected and have another 3 years together under our belts. He still swings out of tune, and I'll never tell him because I love his voice, and the joy singing brings him no matter what. Story 11. I was a bit clueless with women. I became friends with one of my coworkers and found out he was a real ladies' man. He tried to coach me on how to be better with women, which I feel like only made me less anxious but no better with them. He made it his goal to help me lose my virginity. Set me up with 2 of his friends, but I couldn't stay hard. This was news to me at the time, but that's not uncommon. Fast forward a few months, I'm going on pretty regular dates with the girls, but still no action. He sets me up with a 3rd friend, one who I'd never met. Got her number, set up a time, drove over, super nervous. Meet her at the door, she takes me up to her room, and I'm still kind of clueless. We sit in the bed and exchange about 2 sentences before we start making out. I'm still super unsure, and I'm worried about having the same problem I did before. Things progress, we have sex, then cuddle a bit. It's kind of like turning 18. You don't feel any difference until it just sinks in what's happened. Then you feel like a big man on campus for a few days, and then it's all back to normal. For me, I'd say, once it's all demystified, it's way less nerve-wracking. Oh, and communicating with your partner is very important. I got lucky because she was super kind and patient. I guess my friend had told her, It had been a while since I'd done something like that. Turns out she didn't know I was a virgin, she just thought it had been a while since I had hooked up with anyone. She said, I did very good for my first time. Looking back, she was definitely just being nice. But it definitely helped me with my confidence. Overall, pretty decent experience, I'd say. Dude, your homie is probably the coolest guy ever. Consider yourself lucky to have a friend like that, or he's just a pimp. Either way, he's awesome. Story 12. Let's go on a journey together back to the summer of '99. I was a 17-year-old skate guard at a roller rink, which really was the ultimate place to work. Good friends, unlimited ring time, and it was a ridiculously rich environment for teenage hookups. I met a girl throw buddy I worked with, and as you did in those times, we exchanged AIM screen names and would link up a night to have conversations that always devolved into a raw teenage talk. Raw, as in we, at least me. I didn't know the first thing about what women like, but I thought I would be good at it if given a chance. And my corniness knew very few boundaries behind a screen name with a willing participant on the other end of the line. She was as into it as I was, which was an amazing revelation. Jesus, I'm getting wishful thinking about how open and honest we were with each other in those conversations. Innocence is fleeting, man. Anyway, one sweltering afternoon in late August, I go to check to see who read my prophetic cat power lyrics away message, and she hits me up telling me I should come over to her parents' house so we can hang out. My dad died a few years later, and I always wish I could ask him if I was speaking English, as I ran past him out of the house and jumped in my truck, gunning it in reverse a little to no regard for neighbors or children playing. I hope he knew, as he shook his head in utter confusion, that I thought I had a chance of greatness. I digress. I get to her house, and I'm immediately reminded that this girl had the biggest boots I'd ever been around. And I say that without hyperbole. F-Series, all gas, truly impressive. Well, this is all well and great. Things were overly tense and awkward. We had never hooked up and had never chilled one-on-one, and both knew that we talked some shit to each other, that we might have to back up if called into question. So we sat in the family living room and watched a college football game, and kind of sat in silence. I asked her where her parents were, and she told me they were at the game we were watching. I like to think it was the hormones blocking my receptors, and not that I'm just plain dumb. But I sat for 20 minutes before I realized the game was being played in Indiana, a different state that we were in, a state that is far enough away to ensure that our parents aren't coming home anytime soon. So I blurted out, "Oh, they're in Indiana." Like a very caring person tending to a puppy in a storm, she half rolled her eyes and said, "You figured it out. Do you want to go watch in the basement?" Hormone fog be damned, I could read between the lines, going downstairs to make things less awkward, though. There was an air that we put off more than we could chew, and neither of us knew how to make the first move. I couldn't tell you who leaned in first, but eventually, one of us did. And we spent a few minutes making out and doing some awkward touching until we both ended up on the floor. That's when things started to take a turn. Without much setup, she aggressively straddled my face, sucking all the air out of my lungs, so I wriggled free for a breath, but it was like being lost at sea. Every time I would find a pocket of air, another wave would crash and suck me under. I really thought it might suffocate and had to tap her side a few times before she realized what was happening. Our inexperience had almost led to tragedy, and I didn't know if it wanted to come or cry. She kindly offered me an old-fashioned rub-down, which was welcomed and appreciated. However, it's important to note that it was a true old-fashioned, very dry. She felt it too, so she's just up and excused herself. I figured I blew it and started planning my exit strategy when she appeared at the top of the steps of the family-sized bottle of baby oil. I think I played it cool, but I was losing my mind. I'm living the dream, and she just stops and asks if I want to do it. I said no. Just like that. I just thought I wasn't ready. She was cool about it, but seemed a little disappointed. So she pivoted, covered herself in baby oil, and asked, "Well, do you want to try something else?" Spoiler, I did want to. I couldn't believe what was going on. I started to feel that itch in the back of my brain, where she again asked me if I wanted it. Yep. Just like that, all of a sudden, I was ready. I slid down like a penguin in a decline and got inside long enough to see the kitchen before it started seizing up. As I was pulling out, she dropped a hammer and said, "Cover me." I saw Jesus at that moment. He wears Iversons and has a lazy eye. When I came back to this plane of existence, we both got embarrassed and rushed to get dressed. I don't know why, but I assumed we were going to continue to hang out, but she started rushing me out of the house. I didn't know if I did something wrong, but it didn't seem like it. She finally told me I needed to leave because her boyfriend was coming over. I didn't know she had one of those. Kind of buried the lead there. I suggested she shower and she told me she didn't have time, so I left, knowing that poor dude is going to be wondering why his girl smells like an overtreated swimming pool. Years later, I was on a train downtown to some friends who pointed out a girl who was looking at me. We made eye contact and we acknowledged each other. She was with a guy. We were friends on Facebook but never talked, so it was natural to just nod, remember, and move forward. This story came up, and a wager was made that she would reach out to me within a week. We got off at her stop to walk to the bar and she was at the top of the escalator waiting to say hi. She made it a point to introduce me to her boyfriend. Seemed like a nice guy for as much as I could glean from a minute-long interaction. We said goodbye and went before we were going. She messaged me to hang out before we got to the bar. Some things never change, holy cow. This store left me speechless. There's awesome and there's this story. 10 out of 10 in my book. Literally stuff of fantasy right there. Story 13. I was really drunk. 2 friends, male and female, that had a stable relation offered me a threesome. I assumed it was a joke and replied, "Law yes, boom." We were doing it. It was my turn on the girl. I went 1, 2, 3, 4 pumps, and my stomach got upset from all the alcohol and wanted to puke. So I laid on my side to rest and eventually fell asleep. Woke up in a corner of the room, baked, and my underwear nowhere to be seen. It eventually made its way back to me, flying to my face in the middle of a party in the same house years later. PD, no, we didn't get to do it ever again. We had talked about it and remained just friends. If you've made it this far, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have some time, I'm sure you love. Redditors have walked in on your partner, are significant to other cheating. How did you react in that moment? Story 11 will blow your mind. See you there.